Welcome to the Soul Patch Podcast, the podcast where three American expats explore different topics related to living and working in South Korea. With a combined 45 years of living experience in Asia, there are plenty of stories to tell. So, pop in your headphones and make yourself comfortable. It's time for the Soul Patch Podcast.
Well, just since we're here without Jack today, what should we talk about? I've seen a couple of things in the news actually that are talk about Jack.
Talk some smack about
Except
Jack.
he's going to listen to this later. That's the problem with
public.
Jack, when you listen to this, we were only saying good things before we hit record. No, I saw a couple of things on the news recently about the incoming president, because we just had the election, right? And I don't want to go political or anything because that's just not fun, and I don't know much about it. Although, did you see the election results for it? This was a crazy politicized election.
Yeah, I mean, I heard about it from my girlfriend. I didn't really watch it too closely. I mean, I live in
same. Yeah.
I mean, you can't avoid it.
Right. But it was, I mean, the guy won, Yoon Suk-yeol won by only 0.7%.
Yeah.
That's crazy. This was a very tight election. The country was very split over this.
So what do you think? I don't know. Do you think it's like the increase in participation?
I don't know what actually the numbers of people who voted were for this. Korea generally tends to have a decent amount of people who turn out for elections. I think like 70-80%. I'd have to look for this one.
Okay.
Maybe it's closer to like 60-70. But more than in the States, which it was like maybe 50% or something like that. But for this one, I don't know why it was so close. I mean, it was close because from what I was seeing, everyone hated everyone. This was a very vote not for who you want, but vote against the person you don't want kind of election. And it was very politicizing about that. But I don't know too much about each of their individual policies. I know a little bit about either, but that's not so important. What I have seen though, because Yoon Suk-yeol won, he's gonna be president in May, I think, is when it kicks in. So I've got like another month and a half or something. And so I've seen, I think, some fun stuff to talk about today are like things that might be changing in Korea. So there's three things, two that he's talking about, and one just other article that I sent you yesterday. But first, Yoon Suk-yeol has said that he wants to put Korea back on the nuclear power grid, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is an interesting thing because it's not really politics, it's just, energy, which is politics. But because I'm not sure how much like Jack and I actually talked about this in one of the times that you didn't make it. Korea is really good at nuclear power, like really good at nuclear power. Jack was telling me last time they export nuclear power to other countries. So if another country is like, yo, we want a nuclear power plant, and they don't know how to make it, they're like, call Korea up, and Korea sends people to go and build it. But even though Korea is really, really good at nuclear power, they have very few plants here. Actually, I should have looked this up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wasn't aware of that. I think I knew there was at least a nuclear power plant. I didn't know that it was something that was in any way like a dominant thing, like, doing a lot of I do a lot of rural traveling in this country, like cycling. I don't think I've ever seen cooling towers here.
Right. So that's the thing though. Korea is really, really good at it, apparently, from what Jack was telling me before, but there's not very many nuclear power plants actually here. They don't like nuclear.
Okay.
And this was a political thing. This was because when Moon, the current president, when he got into office, this was not long after, it was a couple of years after, remember Fukushima in Japan? That was already a bunch of years ago. People were just scared of nuclear power. And especially because a lot of the nuclear power plants here are relatively old. They're getting to that point where they just needed to be updated. But nuclear power, and I'm not an expert at all, but it's quite safe. When done correctly, it's quite safe. But Moon was responding to people who were scared of nuclear power, and so he basically was like, no more. I'm stopping nuclear power, and we're just gonna go with coal, which is shitty, because it just creates a lot of pollution.
Yeah, I mean, especially
So
considering like, I mean, again, I don't know the numbers on stuff like this, but air quality in Korea has been an issue since we've lived here.
yeah,
And yeah, one of the two of those is going to contribute a substantial amount more than the other.
right. Yeah, like if I look at Wikipedia just really quick, I just loaded up. There's like it's listed under like coal, fuel, natural gas, and nuclear. Coal has a list of like 20 or so, just rough estimate, maybe 30 different like power plants. Fuel oil has 3, natural gas has like 7 or 8, and nuclear has like 1, 2, 3, 4. In Korea, there's 4 nuclear power plants, so far fewer than it. And so this is something that Yoon Suk Yeol basically is like, we're going to make more nuclear, and that's one of the things that he's going to do.
He's going to build.
Yeah, they're gonna
wow.
They're gonna start going to more nuclear plants, which seems like a good thing considering that Korea they're so good at nuclear tech. I didn't realize that at first. So that seems cool, because that's another thing about Korea is they want to be environmentally friendly, and nuclear is not environmentally friendly necessarily, but Korea is not very able to do renewable resources.
No, why is that? I mean, I guess like maybe like the landscape for wind. I mean, like hydroelectric. There's like in Chuncheon, there's that gigantic dam.
Yeah,
is that
apparently? And I don't know enough about it. They're able to do some renewables, right? Like they've got a couple of dams, and I mean, you'll see wind power plants. I'm sure you've seen them tons of times on your bike rides. If you're in Jeju, there's those wind turbines all over the place. But they're not able, like just based on topography, basically, Korea isn't able to generate enough renewable energy.
I do see some effort. I mean, going all the way back to when I moved here, I was very surprised at how many, not just how many, where you find solar panels. Going all the way back to when I arrived in Korea. If you go to the countryside, you can see what, I don't want to say like poor farm. I mean, you're not talking about like their economy, but like not like I'm talking about like a small little hamlet, a little village. And on top of like the person's little shed or whatever, you're looking at the roof and it's like, wait, that whole thing's a solar panel.
Nice.
I noticed that more, or even in the city. When I used to live in Itaewon, my next door neighbor, from my balcony, I could look down on his roof, and he had a rooftop garden, like most, a lot of
rooftop gardening is great.
Yeah, and he had an awning that was put up, and it was all solar panels. If I look out my window right now, I bet I could probably point to some.
I'm trying to think if I go up to my roof. I mean, I've looked out from my roof a bunch. I know there's a house just that way. They've got a big solar power, like our solar panel thing, but they're the only one that I can think of around. So there's at least 1 or 2, but not many more.
Yeah,
most of the houses are.
I noticed they're more common in the countryside.
So have you ever seen? I saw this post on Reddit.
Maybe they're used like, if you have like a utility shed or something, and it's for a low power thing, or it's not like for your house.
That makes sense. That actually also makes sense, because in the countryside, you're going to see a lot more privately owned buildings. Like some family owns their house, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in Korea, a lot of people are living in villas where like you don't own the place where you're living.
Right.
Or you're living in these massive apartment buildings where, of course, you own your apartment, but you don't own the building. And so that's up to the owners for that.
Right. You're not going to mod your apartment as much as your house with something especially like that. That's a
huge Have you ever seen, I've seen this post on Reddit a couple of times. People are like, look at what South Korea has. And then someone, of course, in the comments, like, it's only one small section. But there's a bike path somewhere. It's like in between like a couple of freeways, and the bike path is completely covered by a solar awning. Like you just ride in the shadow of solar. Have you seen that?
Yeah, on the bike path.
I don't know where it is.
Even in the city, you can find that. Is it around like Yangjae? Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of little solar installations on the bike paths. Like you've seen this. They're lamps. and the lamps have a
Uh,
solar panel on the backside. There's some cute ones. I forget which tributary they are. It's one of the little tributaries into the Han somewhere. I know there's some listener that's going to be like, yeah, I know exactly where that is. It's in the city. They look like sunflowers, but the center of the sunflower is a solar panel.
mm,
There's other ones I've seen. I think these are also in the city. It might be on one of the bike trips, but they're like solar panels combined with a small little wind turbine.
oh, nice.
Yeah, it looks
Wow,
like
double.
like a pinwheel, like a little kid would use, like a little toy.
Mm,
But it's pumping up some energy. And it's kind of funny, it's got a little solar panel, little wind turbine, but it's enough to turn that light on and keep it on for most of the night, I imagine.
right.
And I've biked at night past some of those, and the illumination, I mean, it's bright. It's like it's plugged in. I mean, I guess.
Right. Yeah, so I guess there is a decent amount of like small renewables here in Korea, but from what I understand, and again, I'm far from an expert, but from what I understand, the Korea just doesn't have the ability to generate enough for the entire country to switch to completely renewables. Like they can do some wind, they can do some hydroelectric. Is it also called, or not? I guess tidal is kind of a thing, but Korea doesn't get a lot of waves, and so that's not a huge. I think it's possible to get a little bit,
Yeah.
but not a lot.
Yeah. I don't like thinking of again, like what you see when you're out in the countryside here. The wind turbines, I mean, I've seen, Jeju maybe, but I don't know, man. Like
I've definitely seen them in Jeju.
It's a lumpy place,
It's a very
really lumpy.
hilly country. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got these really short stack mountains that you're we could do a whole episode on geography. Let's bookmark that, because that's a really neat thing about this place. It doesn't just affect like, hey, if you like bike trips, it affects things like dialect, right?
Yeah, true.
The history of Korea, the division of the peninsula. It's the geography.
That's politics. If we go back into that, politics is very split by region.
Yeah, which is it's really kind of a fascinating thing. If you look at the geography, you can see that there's not a lot of, what do you call it, arable land, like for farming. There's not a lot of flat. Yeah. It's all lumpy. So the farming areas like push right up to the hills, right to the edge, right to the foothills of the mountains. And I can't imagine there being like huge fields available for wind turbines.
Right, exactly. That's actually one thing that's one reason that North and South Korea would benefit, and this is a total different topic, but benefit from reunification, because they have very different types of lands and things like that. And so surprisingly, even though they're so close to each other, and so they'd be able to benefit a lot from, South Korea has the mountains and these types of things, and North Korea has a bit more like farmlands and things like that.
Tying that back to the president-elect, what's his stance on North Korea? What's his?
I think he's going to be harder on North Korea. He's conservative.
What does this mean? So, like, I mean, I've heard this, but what does it mean?
I mean, like Moon was trying to be friendly, and I think we're going to see.
Yeah, he was like famous for the soft approach.
Right. I think we're going to see Yoon Suk-yeol being much more like, he's very much on, he's like pro-America, and so, America tends to take the hard approach on North Korea as well. And so I think we're going to see that type of, like, they're going to push a little bit harder, not give them as much, maybe just make more demands in general. But I'm not really an expert on that.
I asked some of my students, maybe it was last week before last, they were interested in social welfare majors. And so I'm talking to this group, and one-on-one, we're doing like a conversation debate. So
they're fun to talk to.
I'm hopping chairs and talking to individuals. So it's not like a like group pressure to agree with the group or whatever. And I was asking them what they thought about the election and what they thought about how they feel about reunification. And it's a fun question, I think, to ask 20-year-olds. These are all freshmen. So, it's they're, a generation away from us, and we're getting there. And it was unanimous. Every student was against reunification, and the reasoning was unanimous as well, which is that there's absolutely no benefit to South Korea. And maybe they all just came from public schools too. So maybe this is like a teaching, like a public school teaching point or something, like I'm not sure if they're like indoctrinated to think that. I don't think so. I don't think that's how it is. But yeah, I does this guy have any like loud vocal opinion about reunification?
That I don't know.
Is that just
about reunification? I don't really see that like really ever happening, or at least not anytime soon. I mean, the students aren't wrong about that. There are some benefits, I think, in terms of this like land, but I think that's really just about it. And honestly, reunification would be tricky because I mean, you think there's a lot of people living in Seoul now. Imagine if they suddenly opened the borders and everyone would just like rush to Seoul. The population here would just expand because nobody would want to be up north again.
Yeah, I mean,
it would be really rough on the South Korean economy at first. From what I understand, it would like tank things, and then it would get better and overall improve.
So maybe
once they started to combine, but at first it would be rough.
So maybe the only way it would possibly be possible would be if maybe a new industry arose in South Korea that demanded a lot of human labor, or like what do you like unskilled workers? I'm not sure. I don't want to like disparage the people of North Korea. They might all be like tech geniuses. I don't know. But maybe that is the case. But whatever like the people are good at doing, good at building, good at if South Korea had that need in a it'd be like, whoa, cool, instant population demand filled.
Pretty much.
But I don't know what that would be. And again, I have no idea what I'm talking about because this is way over my pay grade.
Yeah,
this is a tough topic right now. I just googled him because I haven't really caught up the election. I can tell the listeners to the podcast, this guy, he's got the greatest hair. He's got the greatest hair of any Korean president I've seen in a long time.
That's funny. I wonder if that has to do with it. One of the things that the other guy was promising for his election promise. Did you hear about his hair promise?
No, what?
So the other guy, Lee Jae-myung, he was promising that if he was elected, he would add hair treatments to your insurance coverage.
Oh wait, Jack said that. I thought Jack was just making a joke because Jack's bald. I thought it was just he was terrific. Oh my God, that's real?
The other guy was saying that, yeah, I mean, he lost, of course, so this isn't going to happen. But
yeah, I mean, that's why he lost. That's a dumb thing to say. Like, people are like, that's not exactly life and death and of the moment here. Yeah, I mean, if that's part of your platform, I don't know, man. Like, what would be the counter of like, and we'll give makeovers to all the women who vote for me as well, or like, I don't know, breast implants or something. Like, what?
Yeah, it was. I mean, the whole election was just filled with random stuff that both of them were saying. Like, it was, again, I don't want to go back to election too much, but it was like one person starts to gain ground and the other one just says something dumb and they both tank. But then the other person says something dumb and they both tank. It was just a lot of that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so nuclear power. Yoon Suk-yeol wants to bring nuclear power back to Korea, which again seems like a good thing, just because we need to cut coal, and coal is unsustainable, and we do have a lot of air pollution here, so it'll be good to get some of those coal plants down. And again, Korea has great tech for nuclear power plants. Actually, I was talking with someone in our office just yesterday. They were telling me the reason that Korea has really good tech for nuclear power, or one of the reasons, is that they basically have made like the Lego design for nuclear power. So instead of each power plant being unique, they just have one thing. It's just like, this is a nuclear power plant. And so they can build it anywhere, and they can build it nice and easy. And it's easy for anyone to repair because every power plant is the same.
Okay. So these are projects that we could probably see happening pretty quickly. Like most building projects in Korea are really crazy fast.
really quick. Yeah, yeah. Hopefully that'll be interesting to see. But I think nuclear coming here will be. Yeah, it just seems that something that Korea should already do, considering it is what they do, just in other countries. They just don't do it here, and that was purely political, and so that's why he wants to change that.
Yeah, and
Um,
the whole Fukushima thing and the threat of earthquakes and tsunamis. Since we've been here, I've been here during one earthquake. I remember I was in Sangdo in Dongjaku
mm,
by our university.
yeah, near the
When
uni.
I was living over there, I remember I was sitting on my couch and I'm reading a book, and I felt the couch move, like it bounced, and
Mm.
my thought was like, my first thought was goddamn neighbors. I was like, oh bro.
Right.
And then I went back to my book for a minute. I'm like, wait a minute, the couch moved. What the heck did they do? Like, it wasn't just like a little like bang on the wall. I'm like, I just moved 1 inch. What's going on here? And then that's when I found out there was actually, it was like the I don't know what you call the shock wave or whatever from that earthquake.
Mm.
But typically, a lot of people from a distance abroad looking at Korea, thinking East Asia, there's a lot of association with earthquakes and things like this because of Japan. But
Right.
correct me if I'm wrong, Korea is not prone to these things like Japan. We don't really have the tsunamis and earthquakes. That's not really much of a thing.
No, Japan is in that the ring of fire of like volcanic, and it's like right on that tectonic plate. But Korea is just inside from it, so no, we don't get it here. And so yeah, I'm not too worried about that. And again, even I mean, a nuclear power plant that's well built these days is built to withstand earthquakes and things like that. So I'm not at all concerned if that happens.
It'd be interesting to see if they can build it out rapidly, how much of an effect it would have on the misemonji and
The pollution.
Yeah, because I don't know, what year would you say was the worst? I think like 2017, wasn't that the 2017?
Yeah,
18?
it's definitely gotten worse and worse. So like I remember when I came here, I remember the spring, you get the yellow dust. And I remember my friends being like, yo, this is yellow dust. And I was like, what the hell is yellow dust? It's the sand basically coming over from the Gobi Desert from China. And I was like, well, that's crazy. But then I don't remember pollution being bad. I just remember yellow dust being a thing, but not pollution being a thing. And then like a few years after,
it was like on schedule.
Yeah, exactly. It was spring. You're gonna have 1 or 2 weeks of yellow dust, and then that's it. But pollution itself wasn't a thing. And then now it's like, I mean, these days, it's spring here, right? So you have one of two options. You have either amazing weather and shit air, or amazing air but shit weather. It's cold and rainy or something like that.
Yeah,
it's just dirty in the spring.
I feel like it has gotten a little bit better recently. Around that time, I want to say 2017, 2018. I shifted from running outdoor to running on a treadmill in the gym because it just got to the point where
it's too bad.
Yeah, and I'm not one to be super sensitive to those things. I mean, everybody's body's different. I know people that react very strongly to pollution in general. They get sick, not just like psychosomatic type of things. I mean, it's literal, like there's hacking. I don't tend to get bugged too much by that. I might come home from a run on a nasty day, have a little bit of a sore throat, but I can like take a shower and then I'm just good to go. But it got so bad, I couldn't run. And so it actually forced me into the gym on a treadmill, and I became the treadmill guy. Like I would go to the gym just to run the treadmill. So I would just camp on a treadmill for an hour. And yeah, I kind of forgot about that era. When I moved over here, so that would be 2019, that's when I started running Namsan, and I haven't been to a gym since, plus COVID, of course. So I've just like to do the QR code and go into places and stuff. I just run outside. That's fine. It's nice. I enjoy it. But I feel like it's gotten better. It's gotten better a little bit.
They're definitely, it's definitely gotten less bad, at least. Um, but yeah, there were a couple of years where it was epic. Let's see what this spring brings us. Hopefully, although COVID also just reduced pollution in general because things were closed down. So maybe it's global.
Oh, that's a good point too. There's less energy being used. I mean, less
Just
business
realized.
open.
Although it's yeah,
Less
so
less
now that
less
COVID
gogi
is
being grilled.
ending,
Less gogi fires.
it's amazing when you pass by some gogi restaurants, like the ones kind of out of town, where it's like 2 or 3 floors of like gogi restaurant, and you can see the smoke because they filter it all through from every table all together.
Yeah.
And it's like they have like a proper smoke stack of just gogi grill.
Oh, there's
Smoke.
from my window here, I'm looking down into Huan Market. So I'm right on I'm inside the market, and
Mm,
on this end there's a series of course gogi restaurants, and there's a dak galbi place that's I think
mm.
like a machi, but it's a famous restaurant for the hood here. And in the evening time, especially in the winter when it's cold, I can look at my window and it's like someone's throwing a party over there. It's like a campfire, just it's like straight up to the sky.
It's
And
gnarly.
you open the windows and it's just delicious smelling.
Nice.
Chicken fat on the
Yeah.
wind.
Nice. Well, hey, let's move to the second thing, because we keep getting crazy off topic, and this is fun. But the
Jack's not here. There's no rules.
the second thing, I think this is actually a more interesting or more fun cultural topic. The other thing that Yoon Suk-yeol has said, and from the articles that I saw, he said that he would do this during his campaigning, and not he hasn't said anything since officially being elected yet. So we'll see what actually happens. But he said he's going to get rid of Korean age. Now,
okay, I didn't catch this one. For real?
Yeah. So
I don't buy
really
it.
quickly let's explain. Well, the thing is, I don't think he's going to get rid of it. But first off, let's explain what Korean age is, because I mean, if people have lived here before, they will know. But if they haven't, I'm sure you've explained this to your family probably like a dozen times.
Yeah, it's really strange if anybody's not familiar with it. It's quite odd.
Yeah. So Korean age is basically the concept is that you're born at 1 year old, right? So your age starts more or less at conception. And
Yeah,
so
so repeat that point. You're never, like in Korea, you're never starting at like 0 and then you're like 1 month old, 2 month old. You start at 1.
Right. And this is really weird. I remember when I was first teaching at kids at Hagwons, I would meet like a kid and the parents would be like, oh, he's 5 years old, but he's not 5 years old. Like American age would be 3 or something. And now I just confused the audience even more because I just said he's 3 when it should be 5 Korean. That's +2, not +1. So the way Korean age works, just to make it as simple as possible, every year at New Year's, you gain 1 year of age, right? Every year at New Year's, you gain one year of Korean age. And that's it. You gain a new year of age. So
in a way, everyone's birthday, even though it's not birthday, but everybody's age day.
Right.
I thought that's the way it was explained to me. They said the way it was explained to me the
Age
first
day,
time was everybody's birthday was the same, which semantically are like, I was like, that's not, how's that possible? This place is really crazy. They're all getting born on the same day too. What an organized country. This is phenomenal.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. How can they do that?
Run on the maternity wards on January 1st.
Yeah, everybody stops what they're doing and they have a baby.
Yeah. So your age day. So we can't do surprise parties on your age day, unfortunately, here, because everyone happens at the same time. So everyone gains a year of age at January 1st in Korean age. But then, of course, your age doesn't actually change. So like right now, you and we haven't had our birthdays yet for this year, right? So I am 39 normal age, but I'm 41 Korean age. Now, after my birthday passes this year, I'll be 40 normal age, but I'll still be 41 Korean age because my Korean age won't go up until the next year. And then next year at New Year's, I'll become 42 Korean age, where I'll still be 40 Korean age. So is everyone thoroughly confused? Yeah. Basically, an easy way to do the math, at least, is your Korean age is +2 if it's before your birthday during the year, and it's +1 if it's after your birthday during the year.
Yeah, I think I got that.
Right. It's always +1. It's always a minimum of +1. If your birthday has already passed this year, then just add 1, and that's your Korean age. If your birthday has not passed this year, add 2, and that's your Korean age. So yeah, for kids, it's really confusing because the difference between a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old is significant. So, a kid whose birthday is in July, they're 3 years old, but their parents are like, oh, he's 5, Korean age. I'm like, that's not a 5-year-old. Like 5-year-old should be getting ready for school. This kid is just barely out of diapers. But the difference between me, 39, and 41, whatever, that's not a big difference. It doesn't matter that much in terms of things. Where
So
Korean age, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna kind of jump into it. I wanted to ask you, I mean, this is something that, obviously I haven't really thought about this, and it sounds like you have. What's the, like, for two things. First, what's the practical application of it? Because it's not used for legality, right? Like, it's not used for like the drinking age.
It is.
It is
for drinking age. It 100% is.
So it's used.
How did you not know that?
I don't know.
For drinking
for
age,
13 years, never paid attention to it. I guess when I got here, I was 30. I didn't care about it. So
talk to your students about that for drinking age. So that's what Yoon Suk Yeol wants to change. I don't think, when I said he wants to get rid of Korean age, it's a cultural thing. He's not going to just make people a different age, but he wants to change the legality of it.
Well, there you answer my second question. I wanted to know what the application was and what he wants to change. So, right. I mean, that actually makes a lot of sense to me, because that's kind of absurd, right? I mean,
yeah. So the thing is, so from what I understand, currently your birthday age, our traditional age, what people think about as your age, it does apply still in Korea for some things. According to this article that I found, it applies right now to your taxes, paying taxes, for medical care. If you go to the hospital, when you get your papers, they have your name and they list your age on it. Your age is listed as your normal age, not your Korean age in that case.
What about
so it counts for medical care? Conscription, actually, according to this article, military service is based on your age, your normal age, birth year age. Also, the Youth Protection Act is based on that. So like what you're defined as an age. But then I know, and I don't know what else exactly, but I know for a fact that drinking age is based on Korean age. So students, you can drink in Korea at age 20, Korean age 20. So, some students are 18, some students are 19, but at New Year's, so that's why when students come into university, almost all of them can start drinking already because they're 20 years old. Every now and then you'll have one or two who are early, risers. And so they're like, everyone else can drink but me. And they're like the only one who
what about other things like smoking?
Smoking, I'm not positive. I would assume if drinking is based on Korean age, I would assume smoking is as well.
Huh. So it sounds like, I mean, is that like the only real net effect, is that he wants to basically raise the drinking age? Would it raise it?
I don't know if it would raise the drinking age. They would probably just change it to like 18. It would actually lower it.
Oh, yeah. So they wouldn't. Okay. So yeah, maybe it wouldn't. Maybe they would lower it at the same time as. I mean, it just really surprises me. I literally had no idea. I never thought about it. It surprises me that you would have a system where you're allowing someone who could be young enough or not old enough to pay taxes, and not old enough to, like, military service. You're not being treated as an adult in like all these other ways, but you're allowed to, and the one thing that we're talking about, it's not alcohol just as like, your choice and the maturity to make the right decisions when buying and drinking, consuming alcohol, habit formation, stuff like that. You're talking about biology. Like, that's like someone's physical biology is, you wouldn't give alcohol to a child, not just because it's like they make bad decisions. Like, you don't give alcohol to a toddler because they would make bad decisions under the influence of alcohol. You don't do it because their brain is still developing, their body's still, like, you're not supposed to be drinking when you're that young.
Toddlers are just always making bad decisions.
Well, this is true in the first place. Yeah, you just don't want to compound. You don't want to compound that. So, but what I'm thinking is, like, the alcohol is the one that I think really belongs at like a set number, biologic number, because you're talking about your physiology. So that's kind of funny to me.
So I would assume they would do for this is, like, for drinking. I don't know, actually. The article didn't mention how they would affect this, but probably, like, if the current drinking age is 20 Korean age, which means either 18 or 19 normal age. Well, pretty much at the new year, everyone is going to be 18.
I feel like I see 19 written everywhere. Or maybe it's because COVID-19 is written everywhere now. I swear I see 19 written everywhere. No? Is it 20?
Yeah, no, but I'm sure it's 20. I'm sure it's 20. You are right about the 19, but I think that 19 is more about like when you watch the equivalent of an R-rated program, like TV programs or things like that, are rated 19.
Really? I feel like I see 19 written at the Pyeongchang.
You're right, but I'm positive that the Korean drinking age is 20 Korean age. I'm like 100% sure of that. But let's find out. But I guess this would be the only thing that they would change. Let's see, 200. Yeah, the legal drinking age in South Korea is 20 Korean age.
Okay. Yeah, I just found it too. Must be the COVID-19
Um,
things I'm seeing everywhere.
but no, you are right though about 19 being a thing, and I've definitely seen that on bars. But I know
Oh,
it
okay.
now. I'm confused. Um, I
Huh.
know it applies for TV shows and movies and things like that. So that might be just a different one. Like you have to be 19 to go into an R-rated movie or a 19 movie, or things like that.
Theater
But
much. Yeah.
so yeah, same. But I've seen like TV shows where like we were watching one that that was really violent, and so it had like the 19 rating on the TV. So I mean, kids can turn it on, of course.
Oh
Anyone can
yeah,
turn on
yeah,
the TV,
definitely. I've
but
seen Netflix. I think I've seen Netflix. I've seen
right,
the 19 there, so maybe that's why I associate
and
it
that's
with
just like
a universal
yeah, that's
like
just like
adult
parental.
age feeling to
Yeah,
me.
that's like
That's
parental warning more than
yeah.
anything. So I'm not sure in what ways all the Korean age is actually still used. It seems to be, they use Korean age for some things and birth age for other things. And this is where Yoon Suk Yeol has promised to unify the legal age counting method just to make things not confusing. Which, yeah, I mean, kind of does make sense for legal things at least. I'm sure Korean people would still talk about their age in Korean age, probably because I mean, you know how they talk about it in Korean. Like now, like if you ask how old someone is, you would say like, "How old are you?" and you just say your number, or they'd say like your man age is your birth age. So it's like I'm 39. Man is that age.
Yeah, I think it's pretty embedded into the language and the culture. I don't see that going away, but now I understand better. I thought you were saying he was just like trying to flip the table and be like, we're gonna make our system, like in an effort to be like more Western or something like this. It's not nothing like
Right.
this. It sounds like it's actually
It's not
has
a cult. It's more of a legal thing than a culture thing. Like, I mean, we'll see what happens to the culture. I mean, if
yeah.
if nothing uses Korean age, I can imagine people would start referring to themselves maybe as their birth age a little bit more. But I've started when people ask me how old I am here in Korea now, I don't actually tell them how old I am because it's just confusing to say, especially as a foreigner. Do they want my Korean age? Do they want my birth age? So I just tell them the year I was born
Mm.
instead. That's an easier math to do. It's just like, oh, I was born in '82, and then they can do the math themselves if they want. But for them, it's like, oh, now they know what it is.
Do you think there's as much of an issue with like I think like adolescent delinquency or what do you want to call it, like juvenile crime and things like that in Korea are generally less than in the US. I think that's
I'd say crime in general in a lot of ways.
yeah,
Is
right. Well, yeah, I
different.
mean that's not like a real brave statement. Like, okay, yeah, duh. But
At least in terms
I
of
remember
those
when
types of crimes.
I remember when I was like a sophomore, I think it was a junior in high school, and my friend's sister's friend he was like, it was really funny. He was like 26 or 27, and they thought his ID card looked like me, so they gave it to me. And uh, so I went to try to use it, and no one ever took it from me. That's Wisconsin too, probably, but I got laughed at a lot, Like, I mean, I was like 110 pounds, and like I'm trying to pretend I'm like a 27-year-old. I was just, but
I'm
that's like that type of thing. Do you think that's? I don't really know any teenagers in Korea like on a personal
mm,
level, or I'm not around any teenagers. So what do you, I mean, you're living with a Korean family and stuff, like you're around like, your wife's cousins and family. Do you think this is a thing? Like, is there an issue where like Korean kids are going into like GS25 and like trying to, you know, with fake IDs or trying to,
I've heard some things. I don't think fake IDs are really a thing here very much. I think kids tend to know although this might be changing, I think they started cracking down on it. But I remember hearing that some like the smaller peony jumps and stuff like that, like kids would just know where they don't card and where they don't really care too much. Um, and so those would be the places where they could go and buy cigarettes or alcohol. Because from what I understand, high schoolers in Korea, I mean, you definitely see smoking in high schoolers in Korea, and drinking definitely happens in some cases. I don't think it's as much. Like I don't think you have like big house parties and stuff in Korea, but I'm sure some Korean high schoolers do go out drinking.
Yeah, but do you,
or, they find like.
But do you see like, all right, so I see what look like younger people smoking cigarettes, but most high school kids are wearing uniforms. I don't think I've ever seen.
I've seen
high school kids with uniforms.
I've seen kids in uniforms. Smoking. Yeah.
All right, that's pretty funny.
Not often, but yeah.
That's good to know that like punk is alive here. That's good. I don't condone smoking, but for kids, but still, I kind of like it in a way.
I quit smoking. That was a good decision. I'm glad that I did that. But no, it definitely. I mean, Korean delinquency here is interesting. I've never really thought about it too much. It's definitely a thing. I remember talking to students in the past. It's not like a thing as commonly, but you'll see like middle school students, and it's kind of like almost a joke. But it's like one of those true things that people joke about. It's like a group of middle school students who are like scary middle school students that even the high schoolers will like avoid. And they're like, sitting in the corner, like smoking cigarettes and swearing and spitting on the street and stuff like that. So
in their
I mean, they're
name tags.
Probably. But it definitely is a thing, but I don't think there's much like other crime. I think that's probably the worst that they do. I don't know. And bullying. I mean, bullying is definitely a big thing here, of course. And that's a big thing everywhere. Kids are mean. But yeah, so drinking age.
Well, I was asking because if his idea, his initiative or whatever to change to get rid of Korean age for the purposes, most likely it seems to normalize or rectify the drinking age. I was wondering if it's due to some issue here backed by statistics that people are becoming concerned about with teenage alcoholism, or
I don't think the thing is, I think for us, we're just pointing to the drinking age as the thing that there's probably other things that use your Korean age as well.
Yeah, like you had mentioned, just in that same breath, you had mentioned before, like some different like welfare credits or things like this.
Right. So like the article I had, they were saying like welfare and healthcare still uses your normal age, but I can imagine like, for example, like if you go into a museum, right? Or go to a movie theater, maybe there's like kids prices for the museum entrance or adult prices. Those ages are probably based on Korean age.
What about the age for marriage? Like age of consent and stuff like that?
I would assume that's based on Korean age actually, but I don't know.
Yeah, because that could be another.
That feels like that's based on Korean age. So there's more to it than just drinking and smoking. Those are just the things that we think of because the things that our students are. Yeah, I'm sure there's more to it, and so he basically just wants to make everything just legally based. And I'm sure they will have to go and then define the ages. If drinking age is currently 20, Korean age. Well, if they changed everything to be using your birth age, what will the drinking age be set to? They'll have to set a number. They're not going to just keep it 20 because that would effectively raise it. So will they drop it to 19 or 18? I don't know.
Kind of as a tangent, I just wanted to ask you, as of everybody that I've known in Korea, like since I've been here, you were always one of the younger ones. So for listeners, Kevin's younger by a few years. And the people that have been like my friends, you're probably the youngest, I think.
I'm finally not the youngest one in our office. Damn it.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you.
It's taken 13 years of working there.
When you originally came here, obviously you were younger.
Yeah.
At that time or any time since then, have you ever been carded to buy a beer in Korea?
I think once.
Really?
I think so, but when it was
really
like
ARC, or what'd you show them?
I might have, yeah, probably that's what I showed them at the time. I think, when I came to Korea, I was 25. And generally they don't really card foreigners just in general, because even if you're a foreigner living here, you're probably an adult, right? There aren't too many foreign like high school students.
Yeah.
Not that they don't exist, but they're just, a much smaller population. And so yeah, I think I got carded once years ago, and I seem to remember being just really confused because for the first like year here, like I could go in anywhere and never get carded, and I go back to the States and I would still get carded, although probably not
Yeah.
now.
I think finally maybe I wouldn't. I know that I was with my dad, and this is in Wisconsin, where, for listeners that don't know, in Wisconsin, children can drink if you're with an adult, even in a public place. There's a few states, I think Florida's like this too. So typically pretty liberal with these types of things, but carding is not. I was with my dad. This is after I lived in Korea, so I was over the age of 30. My dad had to be, up to almost 60, right? Yeah. Late 50s. And we were at like a gas station or something and picked up a 6-pack of beer, and they carded both of us. Now, I don't think the worker there's a moron. Like, they're not looking at my dad and going, hey, this must be a 18-year-old. It's not what they're thinking. I think it's just like
Right.
There must be like just a policy for like that gas station. It's like, we card literally everyone, so deal with it. And yeah, my dad said nothing, showed his ID, and I was like, oh, whoa, I haven't done this in a long time. I've been living in Chicago prior, and there's nothing like that. But yeah, I've never been carded in Korea, but I came here when I was 29. So right.
Yeah, like I said, I think if it happened, I think I remember it happening one time, like total, but almost never. It doesn't. It's not really a thing.
Anyway,
so speaking of drinking, then actually, and all this carding thing is kind of interesting because this kind of leads into the final little like article that I sent you. So when you mentioned carding, that's kind of funny. So when I first started drinking, actually legally drinking, was I did a semester in Europe. Right, I've told you that before, in the Netherlands, and there in most countries in Europe you can drink at 18 or 19. And so I was there when I was 20. And so I was going to bars, I was drinking totally legally as a student. For any non-American listeners who we have right now, the legal drinking age in America is 21, right? Which is later than almost any country globally. And I remember when I went back to the States, then I was still 20. I hadn't had my birthday yet. And I was still 20. Now I'd been drinking for 6 months because I was abroad. And I went to a restaurant with my mom, and I just wanted to have like a beer with dinner with my mom. I was back in the States after 6 months. She was like, welcome back. And the lady was like carding me. So like, how old are you? And I was just like, oh, I forgot my ID. And my mom was like, no, don't worry. It's small town. Don't worry. He's old enough. And the lady was just like, are you sure? And my mom was there, like, my mom's vouching for me. Just like, it's okay. And they were still going to be like crazy about carding me here. But the other thing that I found about this is because something else that was surprising to me after living in the Netherlands for a semester is drinking in public. And this is something that is, for me, again, when I was in the Netherlands, you can go out and you can like sit in the park and like have a beer. It's like no big deal. When I went back to the States, I'll never forget when I went back to the States one time, I was at this point legal drinking age. And I was hanging out with my roommates at the time. One of our roommates was downtown, not really downtown, but small Flagstaff, Arizona downtown. And we were going to go and meet them at a bar. And I was like, let's take a beer for the walk. Like it's our first beer of the night. We're nowhere near drunk. We're just walking the streets. We're not driving and going to drink a beer. My roommate's like, that's not a good idea. And meanwhile, I'm still in Europe mode because I'd just gotten back from there. And I was like, that's fine. And she's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, don't worry. We're just walking. What could be wrong? We start walking, and Flagstaff, Arizona has one of the largest per capita police rates of any other city, actually. And so we're walking no more than like a block, and the cop pulls us over and he's like, pour it out. I'm like, what? Why? What are we doing wrong? You can't drink in public in the States. In Korea, of course, you can drink in public, right? I mean, people generally don't, but legally you can drink pretty much anywhere. I saw an article where Seoul City is thinking of making it illegal to drink at the Han River.
On the river, right? So yeah. So for listeners that don't know the layout of Seoul, just go look at a map. There's a giant river, a kilometer wide, that snakes through the dead center of the city, and that's the Han River. And there's parks lining both sides of it. That's what he's talking about. Yeah,
the whole river is basically a park, and it's great. It's a really nice park. There's great bike trails. There's great running trails. There's just all kinds of cool facilities there. And
you can play there's a lot of, he's saying facilities. There's basketball. There's swimming pools. There's
There's rock climbing
There's rock
walls,
climbing, there's tennis courts, there's
all kinds of workout
croquet,
equipment.
there's yeah, I mean, there's probably something new happening right now. There's always,
Yeah, and the Han is great because it's so long as well that it's just like basically a park that splits the entire city, and you can go and just hang out anywhere in the park and just
there's the big
sit
screen
down.
TVs down by the Bamporekyo. There's
Oh,
the
right,
yeah, giant screen TVs. They'll do films, or they'll do
right.
football. There's food trucks. There's, yeah. If
Yeah,
you don't know,
everything.
if you don't know,
The
if you
Han
don't know
is
about the
the Han
Han,
is a nice place to go hang out.
yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's springtime now, so it's a great place to go have a picnic at the Han. And one of the things that was
Cherry
really,
blossoms, yeah.
yeah, one thing that was really, I don't know, just normal is to go and have a pint at the Han, right? I mean, you and I have ridden our bikes down to the Han and just like had a pint and rode our bike home, right? It's just a great place to just go and chill. And so they want to make drinking illegal at the Han River. Why do you think this is? I have some theories. Why do you think they want to do this?
I have a rebuttal to it, even though, like, I'm not a fan of like public intoxication. I think it's, and
Right,
I think Korea actually does pretty, I mean, there's plenty of people like stumbling around drunk or whatever. Korea definitely imbibes more than the global average. But for the most part, Korea seems pretty well organized with public drinking. Wouldn't you agree? Like, you don't have people drinking at the bus stops. You don't have people,
Yeah,
like, walking down the street, even eating. Like, that's just, it's culturally not a thing. Like, you'll
yeah,
have
that's
people sitting outside of a Pyeongjam, of a 7-Eleven, and it's actually designed for that. They
mm,
have picnic benches set up there. We talked about this in a different episode. Like, it's the cheapest bar in the world. You go into the 7-Eleven, you can grab, I really like it because if you don't want to have
agreed.
alcohol, you can have a soda or whatever. You can snacks, you can have literally anything. There's goguma, there's sweet potatoes being roasted on rocks. You can grab one of those along with, like, a bottle of green tea if you want to be healthy. And it's all cheap, and I like that. So I would actually say I'm against this idea of banning alcohol in the Han, because I think the Han River culture, there's an economy there that you'd be damaging. For me, it's an alternative to going to a restaurant or a bar for a meeting. Just like you said, like, hey, wouldn't it be nice for us to hop on our bikes, bike, 15K to the river, to have a pint and bike home? That sounds pretty healthy, nice, out in nature, a great way to meet a friend and say hi.
Especially during COVID, where we don't want to go to a restaurant.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
It's a great place to meet out.
Yeah, you put your feet up, you're watching the passerby, the bikes go down the bike trail. That doesn't that sound lovely? Like, and for a lot of people,
Preach to the choir, I think that's great.
yeah, for a lot of people, like, the meetup, like, to have a pint and a snack, that's still going to be like a thing they're going to want to do. And what are they going to do? They'll be like, well, we'll just meet at a pub instead. It'll deflect a certain percentage of people. Some people still prefer the idea of taking a bike ride, being on the river, sure. But I think that whole economy of the river, like, the food trucks that are over by Yoido,
I
gotta check it out.
Oh, yeah. It's been a long time, but I've seen them.
Yeah, so when I lived on that side of the river, I think that was kind of starting up. It was like a freaking party every weekend. It was awesome. They've got DJs, they've got not just like the food trucks, but there's all different types of entertainment, and it's all lit up. There's so many people. It's like being at a carnival, and it's so much fun.
Yep.
And I really think if they took the alcohol permit out of that, it would gut a big percentage of that party, and it's going to damage that economy. You're going to see the food trucks go away. You're going to see, yeah. And again,
I will agree with you as well. Like you said, like public intoxication. I mean, again, you're going to have those few people that are stumbling around, but in general, even though you've got the ability to drink in public, people aren't, getting hammered at the Han. I mean, some people do at the Han River, but not that many. People are they're like having a pint because it's a nice beverage. It's just something chill to drink. So I definitely agree with you on that. I don't think there should be like
there's no riots. Ban. There's no kids out there rioting, getting hammered, and like chucking beer bottles at people. It's not a thing.
I think the reason for this is not because of alcoholism or public intoxication reasons. I think they're worried more about trash. they're worried about the people, not like you and I who go out and have a pint like during the day and ride our bike back. They're worried about the people who go to the Hun River and get a bunch of beers and go out with their friends, and they're there until 2 or 3 in the morning and leave the trash out on the street.
Yeah, I've done some late rides, man. I see what you're saying. Like I've done some late, or like you've kicked off early on your bike, right? Like you get up just before daybreak or something and you go out and it's before they've had a chance to clean. It's like, holy hell, there's some ripped up sections. Like what the hell happened here?
Yeah. And I think that's because like the law was talking about how they want to make it illegal to drink at the Han River. This isn't to drink outside, right? It's not outside drinking is illegal. It's specifically the Han River.
Yeah.
Right. So like drinking at the Pyeongjam at the convenience store will still be legal, because if you're the asshole who leaves your cans and everything out on the table, well, the worker there, that's their job to clean that up, and you should still clean up your own shit, but that's their job. There's someone responsible for it. Whereas at the Han River, you're responsible for your own thing, and the people who are drinking late at night are more likely some people will still clean up their thing, of course, but man, people are more likely to leave it.
Yeah, I can see your point here. So yeah, let's picture it. So if most Pyeongjams, convenience stores in the city now have those wooden decks like Jack was talking about, the little patios, right? That's the property of the owner of the 7-Eleven, and they're going to maintain it, right? Because that's their property. Right. The 7-Elevens and on the convenience stores on the Han, because they're in the park, so the park has these convenience stores like every couple kilometers or whatever. The same thing, they have little patios and decks and stuff right there, and they're going to maintain that. They'll get pretty thrashed, like the ramen noodle stand and stuff. I mean, it gets pretty crazy because there's just so many people, but that'll be maintained. But if you're going to the river and you're meeting like 10 of your friends, you're not going to hang out on the patio. What are you going to do? You're going to load up on your snacks. You're going to take your plastic bags, your plastic bottles, all your cans, all your wrappers and everything, all your food, and you're going to hike off into the park. Now, where might you go in the park? The park is huge. It's the length of the whole city. Like there's so much of that in between space that's public management. So I could see it being something
camp on the grass.
I could see it being something where it's like you can only drink on the patios. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm just in general for laws. I'm not in favor of blanket bans.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's the issue here. Like not that I have any say in public policy, but if I were to make this law, I'm not necessarily opposed to making it illegal to drink at the park, but I think they should just do like a time limit. If you want to have like a pint during the day, cool. Because generally people during the day are not the ones that are going crazy. But let's say that you can't drink at the Han, or at least the Pyeongjams at the Han River can't sell after midnight or something like that.
Okay.
Right. So that might be one thing that they could do to reduce
but they would still,
the crazy people.
I'm still thinking like Yoido and the food trucks down there, like Banpo. A lot of even though, like, do you know, if you go from my side going
but
south,
those are there during the day, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like that during the day, that would be okay.
Yeah, but think about have you biked past, like, if you go over from, well, you're on the same side of the river as me. So if you go over the Banpo headed south and you go to the left, there's that first, is it a GS25? I don't even know what it is. It's a big one. It's like the biker rally. So all the people pedaling, that's like the bike racks. They got you know what I'm talking about?
I think so. It's been a while since I've been down there.
Over the Banpo, or not actually the Banpo.
Yeah, you and I've. Yeah.
And then you go to the left. If you go to the right, it's the funky architecture things that are floating in the water and the big screen TV, and that goes towards our campus.
Right.
Yeah. So if you go to the left, there's one of the biggest like Pyeongjam scenes. So
I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, these are like convenience stores.
I think you and I have met up down there
on steroids. Yeah, you can get there's like on site. There's fried chicken, and there's the ramen noodle creation stage. Yes, the ramen noodle stage. I'm calling it that from now on. It's the stage. Yeah, it's very involved, and if you ever walk in there during the day, it's shoulder to shoulder. You've got to, just to get through the counter, and they're just cranking people through. Okay, so I can see what you're saying. Like during the day, there's a lot of business being done, but that place is open. I mean, I don't know now with COVID, but it was open quite late. And if you go there at night, people have their tents put up, Lots of tents in the river. Imagine that, like all the tenting. A lot of people are out there. Really common scene I see are tents, couples, cooking, food, and wine.
Yeah.
I see bottles of wine, like a lot of wine, but whatever. And they're having their little camp scene. You're not camping. I mean, that's not really happening until after sundown. So is that all going to go away? No, that's really taking away a lot of charm for the riverfront. I agree with what you're saying. I'm picturing all the pizza boxes and mayhem underneath the bridge.
Exactly.
That's terrible.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of the law because I like to, go out and have a pint, and we should do this before it becomes illegal, if it will. one final on. Yeah. The day before, everyone's just going to go crazy. But yeah, it's something that, I don't know, it's interesting. And this isn't like 100% going to go through yet. It was just like being considered and being sent to law, but it might be illegal to drink at the Han River in the near future.
Yeah. Aside from like aesthetics and things that I like about the city, and that like maybe some people are like, I don't like seeing tents and people drinking wine in the river. It's trashy, right? Okay. My opinion aside from all that, let's just look at the economics of it. Those businesses, and especially like the food truck scene, or even those peony jumps and stuff, they're going to get gutted if you take that away.
Yeah.
I would be more like, if the problem is really the trash in the park, which is what I would imagine. Again, the peony jumps are taking care of their own decks and their area, their landscaped area, that's theirs. If it's really about the in-between spaces, people, taking road beers and chucking them in the river and stuff, maybe the solution isn't to ban the alcohol. Maybe as an alternative, they could do something where they just create absolutely punishing fines.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that, actually. I think they have tried to crack down. I think they have sent people out there. I've seen actually news articles like or news bits on TV where they like send people out at night and just to film it, because it is pretty bad, but they would need to police it. That could work. So that would be.
But then that's another cost as well to police it. So I don't know. This is Ryan and Kevin trying to tell Korea what to do with their economic policies. You're welcome, Korea. We're fixing you again. You are welcome.
But let us keep our beers at the river.
Yeah. We know what's best for this world. Let us tell you. I don't know.
Another problem solved.
Anyway, I think we should wrap it here. I think we've rambled enough about Jack. We carried on pretty well without him, though. We do okay, right?
Yeah. Jack, we don't need you.
Where the hell is he?
No, but come back. We'll be back.
Yeah. Can I do the ending? I'm not sure if I know how to do it. Okay, we're
tell people where to click.
I like never pay attention. Let's see. We're called the Soul Patch. That's SCOUL. Did I spell it right? Like the city.
You did.
The with the article in the front. The Soul Patch.com. Is it? Did we get .com? We got .com.
We do.
Nice. We have an email address that I'm guessing is probably like Gmail.
Podcast@thesoulpatch.com.
Podcast@thesoulpatch.com.
Yep.
Did I say that right? Okay. We are on, I know he always says Stitcher. I don't know what that is, but it sounds fancy. And we're Apple Podcasts. He says, please leave us a review. So do that. And we'll have this up on YouTube as well if you want to see our faces, which you already are seeing our faces because you're listening to this. That's kind of a dumb thing to say. So if you want to review this, you go to Stitcher, you go to Apple Podcasts, probably Spotify, and some other things as well. We have a Patreon button somewhere on some site.
On the webpage. It says buy a coffee.
Yeah. So Jack always says, you don't have to. I'm going to say you have to. If you've listened to this, you have to give us money for coffee. It's a legal
or Han River beers for
Han River beers. Yeah, that's acceptable as well. So if you're listening to this and you don't push the Patreon button, the new president is going to come after you and punish you. It's a new law.
He might.
Yeah. Okay. The end. Is that the end?
Okay. It is.
Enjoy your stay later.
Good day.
I don't know.
I like to pay a couple respects to the people that made me what I am today.
Doc from Gear. It's all my love. It's all my love.
The quiet man.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Dopamine.
Jim.
It's all my love. It's all my love. It's all my love.
The brain.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Hey, Bobby.
Let the bass go.
Call me an eater, call me a dominant.